becoming the Undertaker. Finally, the costume is done. I finally got the fabric, I already have the pattern, and it is finally time. We can finish the Undertaker. We already made all the other parts last time. If you haven't watched it, it's a pretty good time to watch it. And we are very much ready to do the outer coat at last. And all the other little bits and pieces were still missing, like the boots and whatever the thing around his shoulder is. So let's dig right in. What you will need for this project is on screen now. As for the pattern, you can use any side closing coat pattern for this. Just make sure it's long enough, and if it isn't, just make it longer. Make sure you get the right measurements too, very important. And I guess that's it. Any alterations you should make directly on the pattern or on the mock-up that you should probably make first. I don't because I'm lazy, but yeah, I have a weird, easy to model body. It's pretty flat, so pretty easy. But most people have curves, and yeah, make sure your measurements are pretty accurate before you start. So make sure you have any necessary undergarments that you're gonna be wearing for the costume when you take your measurements, you know, because the Undertaker's a guy and we have breasts that we probably need to hide. So do that before you take your measurements, or you won't fit properly inside the coat. It's gonna be all floppy around the chest, and we don't want that, do we? We start by preparing the fabric and pattern. I made my pattern, but you can easily find one online. It needs to close on the side and be at least knee length. May need some adjustments, but it is relatively simple in design, so not much of a problem there. Lay the fabric on the table, folded with the inside in, so you can draw on it, and put the back pattern against the fold to cut. For the front, since the two sides are different, we cut each one separately. Repeat the process for the lining, and cut the interfacing for the collar while we're at it. Don't forget to leave a good seam allowance all around the pieces, and a bit extra at the bottom for the hems. I also cut the sleeves a bit wider at the bottom because the Undertaker sleeves are just a little bit wide. Now we begin constructing the two layers separately. I started with the lining so I could test the fit before starting the outside, but you probably should make a mock-up before starting to cut the actual fabric. You can use a sheet or just some cheap fabric, leftovers wherever you have. Make sure to have the right sides facing each other, and pin the sides of the body and the shoulder seams. You can close the sleeve halfway up or just leave it fully open for attachment because it's a lot easier. As you can see here, I used the lining as a mock-up since that fabric's cheaper and a lot easier to find, and just quickly hand sew it with an easy to see and industrial so I can test the fit. I suggest using an even cheaper fabric for this. Again, let me sew it by machine. I did the zigzag stitch here because I tested the fit first, but it's usually done later on. I also have a bit too much confidence for my own good. Test the fit of the lining and then repeat the process for the outer coat. Now we take the body's lining and outer layers with the right sides together and attach them at the sides and shoulders. I suggest pinning them well before sewing to make sure they match as they should. Now we flip the coat to the right side again. I did the top stitch on the sides here, but it can be done at the end. To close the bottom, you can either just close it along with the rest, then flip it back to close the top and have no hem, or you can do what I did and just close it on the outside to then hem it by hand. You can also do it the hard way. I don't know how to explain it very well, but it's the one where you attach the collar to the top first, inside of the seam, and then flip it back to close the bottom, either on the outside or you close it on the inside, but you leave a space to flip it back. That's then closed by hand. We can also attach the sleeves at the top and bottom, but with the insides together, or do the bottom with the right sides together, then flip to attach at the top if you want to hem them. Now we need to attach the sleeves, the hardest part of any costume without a doubt, which is why we left the top open, like smart people. First, we put the right sides together and pin the shoulder to the top of the sleeve, and the underarm seams together as well. We pin somewhere in the middle to divide the part that needs a perfect fit and the one that doesn't. The top can have a bit more freedom to move about. Then we sew one side of the sleeve at a time, starting from under the arm towards the top, and trying to bunch up the sleeve to meet the coat as you near the top. There's just no better way to explain this process. It's basically that. Just repeat until you're happy enough with it, because it is a hard thing to do and doesn't have to be perfect, just good enough. And once it is, you can flip it back to the inside to close the length of the sleeve. Using the hole we left, we flip the outer layer to the inside to close the seam, then flip it back and close the lining by hand. If you left the whole sleeve open, you flip it to the inside, close the outer layer, then on the lining you need a space to flip it back that you close by hand at the end, like in the other version. Sorry about the shaky camera, but I kept hitting the little arm thingy holding my phone while I was working. I tried stabilizing, but didn't really help much. Just looks weird. Here I did the hems of the sleeves by hand because I like how they look, but they are closed already, so you can just choose to do them any way you like. Same goes for the bottom hem. I added the interfacing of the collar to the lining because it's kind of a droopy collar that I'm going for, but if you want it stiff, just add it to the outside fabric, on the inside obviously. As for the collar, I started by attaching the pieces of the lining together, and did the same for the outer layer. We pinned the lining and the outer layer, right sides together, and sew around the sides and the bottom. Then flip and do a top stitch around the edges. I realized a little too late I was sewing the top of this, and this isn't an upturned collar. so I had to do it twice, like an idiot. Now, attaching the collar. Here it kind of depends on how you want to do it, but the way I did was I put the collar and the coat right sides to wrong, I guess, and pinned them in a position where it flops down nicely over the coat. And I sewed them together. Then we flip the seam and sew over it again to make sure the ugly bits are hidden. Not a very professional way, but it works. I should have ironed the seams as I went along, but my iron's broken, so nothing I can do about it. You can now for sure do the top stitch where it's needed, and iron the entire thing. Time to try it on and mark the placement of the buttons. The first one is easy, just place it nice and close to the top. The second's harder because you need to find the stress point, the place where the most pressure will be applied on the button when it's closed and you're moving about. And finally the last one will be wherever you feel most comfortable to end it. Finally, we make the buttonholes. Most machines can do that with a special foot and some special mode. Then the buttons have to be placed by hand because we didn't choose the flat ones that the machine can place. I asked for help on Instagram and Tumblr to choose, and the gold ones won on both, so gold ones it is. The gold ones were prettier anyway, so I'm okay with that. Since they are also thicker than usual, the buttonholes had to be a couple millimeters longer as well. And I think that's it for the coat. For the shawl, or whatever the gray thing is around his shoulder, I used a gray cotton fabric for the outside and a little filler layer to make it seem fuller because I didn't have a lot of fabric, so I had to improvise. I measured what I needed to tie it and only stuffed the filler layer until there. Then attached them with the right sides of the gray together and the white against the one I chose to be the bottom one, and closed all around, leaving 20-ish centimeters to flip it over, that is then closed by hand. Then I put it on the mannequin and used some pins to bunch up the fabric in a pleasing way before using a couple hand stitches to hold it in place without being too noticeable. For the double beaded necklace, I just bought some beads and measured some black string to make them different sizes, then attach them at the same place and put in a closing. That's about it. I used my usual thigh-high boots for this and just made some fake leather straps out of 5mm AVA foam. Painted it brown with some plastic bits that I painted gold to fake the closings. They actually close with Velcro. I used some hot glue to attach the bottom ones so they can be easily removed if I need to. Pretty simple, easy, and effective. Here we have the final result. Works for both regular Undertaker with a covered face or hot Undertaker with the open coat and revealed handsome face, since we made the inner jacket last time and the rest you can see in the previous videos. Pretty soon we will have the gorgeous that side. I'm just about to finish that too, I guess. And if you want to see the full costume, size and all, you should probably subscribe. And follow me on Instagram for some cool pictures too. Don't be afraid to tell me if this was helpful or how your own attempts are going. Like the Undertaker, I'm always here to help.